Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some logistical housekeeping measures we're concerned about tonight would be to use the public restrooms if you can, going through this door here or out that door there, but they're located just outside there. The reference material for tonight's agenda is over there in the back chairs, if you haven't already got them. And tonight, we look forward to responding to questions or concerns you have. If you wouldn't mind, please go into the podium, announcing your name, and then speaking your public comment or questions to the presenters. And if there's nothing else from anybody else, I'll go ahead and begin this meeting. Okay, it is now 6:17 p.m. and time to call to order this August 14th, 2024 special meeting of the Georgetown Divide Public Utilities District. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Director Saunders,
Present.
Director Stovall,
Can you guys speak up?
Treasurer Thornborough,
Here.
Vice President Seaman,
Here.
and President McDonald.
Here.
Presenting staff today, you have General Manager Nicholas Snyder, Office Finance Manager Jessica Buckle, Operations Manager Adam Brown, Water Resource Manager Alexis Elliott, Legal Counsel Frank Splendorio, and presenting today, we also have Sanjay Kumar, Water Resource.
Thank you, Elizabeth. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Just good.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Director Thornborough, can you listen?
Yep. Sing it, man.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda this evening. Are there any public comments on the adoption of the agenda?
You gonna pass out agendas? Go back there. Yeah.
Sit down.
Bill does.
We also have copies of the presentation as well. So if you're someone who likes a closer visual on especially text, we printed out a few copies of the presentation as well. So,
I think he's gonna bring them up. No, because the questions are on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do it.
Their comments. Different questions. I'm going to look at them.
All right. Okay, fair enough. Wait. Yeah.
Okay. We'll give you a couple of minutes to take a look at the agenda. Decide whether you have questions. It's a short agenda. Oh.
No, it doesn't matter. I actually was there.
That's what you do there.
I didn't want to jam you people out. Here. Anybody else?
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands raised. Need more time? Yes, please. Okay.
She's on the presentation.
there'll be time at the end after the presentations to ask all the questions and present your concerns or any feedback at the end. The agenda is just essentially adopt the agenda for the presentation to be performed. So if you're good with that, then we can move forward. Okay. I don't see any from the public present or any online. So with that, I'll close the public comment period and no further public comment will be allowed. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion from the board to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0, none opposed for the adoption of the agenda. I'll open this time up again for public forum. And you'll be addressing the board only with this time period here. You got 3 minutes. Questions? Ask the board or give any questions, comments. Okay, none online. I will now close this public comment period. And now.
I still did not see an agenda.
Well, then we can make comments once we hear what your agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
You'll have tons of time. We will stay here as long as your questions are.
In fact, what I'll say is that notice that was just provided is really just a notice of heads up of the public comment you'll be provided after the presentation is given. This is a special meeting. You're only entitled to give public comment on the item on the agenda, which is what you all are here for anyways. And you will be able to provide public comment after the presentation. That was just a notice.
Thank you for the information. I'd like to tell you, we have to leave at 7:30. We have a private engagement. We go to, we might stay a
Thank
little
you so
longer.
much.
We'll
Just
do the
to
best
see
we
what's
can.
going on.
I think we can do that.
Yes. Yes, you could relax. There'll be plenty of time for.
I wish you guys would at least say who you are when you go to say something.
Absolutely. Frank Splendorio, General Counsel.
Okay.
Carolyn Lewis.
Does it say anywhere on the bill what size pipe we have?
So we're working on getting that on your bill.
You're working on adding it to the bill?
Yeah, it's not as easy as we thought.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
And one other thing, if you can't be here for the whole meeting, you can go on YouTube. And this will be loaded up on YouTube, so you can review it.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we will be having one tomorrow in Garden Valley if you're able to come to that one as well.
Yes, I was planning on going to that, and I was gonna ask you about that too. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
It's gonna be the same type of meeting, and I could bring up what's happening here, there.
It'll be all the same information presented to us and then just different questions from the public.
Okay. And I see no hands up online and we're good. You'll have plenty of time. What you came here for. Okay, so I'll now close the public comment period and now open it up to the special meeting workshop item. General Manager Nicholas Schneider.
I'll go right to Sanjay.
Hand on the microphone.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is so much.
President, board, public staff, it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Sanjay Jawar. I'm with Water Resource Economics. I'm the principal in charge of this rate study. I was hired to do this rate study. I'm here to present the results of the rate study as we are right now. This is, we've had a series of meetings with the board presenting these information. The first time I met with the board, I remember Nicholas, was 2 months ago at a public meeting where we started talking about the financial situation of this district. And since then, we've had a series of iterations internally developing it. This is a presentation that I presented at the board yesterday at a public hearing. And this is what I'll be presenting again today, and I'll be presenting again the next day. Today, we're talking about water and wastewater service. So water and wastewater service is not a tax, it's a service to provide. And we pay a rate to make sure that service is viable and available. So the district does receive some sort of a property tax to help offset it, but it's predominantly paid for by rates. And today what we're talking about is what the rate should be to make sure that we have safe drinking water in our house and disposal of wastewater. That's the discussion for today, and we'll be going through the series of presentations.
When you say wastewater, you mean ditch water, right?
No,
No?
no, so let's go through the whole presentation and then we'll do other questions, but just to answer your question, so wastewater. If you live within the ALT community, you have a sewer system and that would be the wastewater. So when you hear the words raw water, that's the ditch water.
So we have raw water, irrigation water, untreated water, those are all three the same.
So everybody here have pens to write down your questions for the end.
So yeah, so we would like you to, write down your questions or keep track of them. And then after the presentation, provide your questions and then we can have a discussion. So I would like to go through the presentation if that's.
Yeah.
So, today's agenda is the following, where we're going to talk a bit about how we do a rate study. I've assisted over 150 different agencies in California on how you do these rate studies. I've done this for 25 years. I have 2 master's degrees in this area. So we're gonna talk about the rate study process, how you do that. Then we're gonna talk about treated and raw water or ditch water or irrigation water. And we're gonna talk about the financial plan. We're gonna talk about how we allocate costs between those 2 groups of customers, treated, irrigation, raw customers. Because again, each customer needs to pay its fair share, so that everyone pays. It's not it's a fee for service. Then we'll go over the rates for treated and raw water or dishwater. And then we'll talk about zone wastewater, or that's the ALT, the financial plan and the wastewater rates. So one of the things in any kind of industry where you're working in, there's a lot of jargon terminology, and we use a lot of word also in that. And so this is all the list of all the different jargon words we use. So we have something called fiscal year. We all know what a calendar year is. That's January, right? We all like New Year's, or New Year's Eve, I should say, into December. So the government, usually they have a fiscal year that starts July 1st and June 30th. Just running the business without refurbishing, putting new capital in place. We have another terminology called CIP, that's capital improvement. That's buying something that's usually very expensive, like you capitalize. The metaphor I would like to give with my car analogy is the O&M is the gas. CIP is the tires. Then we go into the street water treatment plan and supplemental charge. For a street water treatment plant, you do have a charge associated with that pays only for that debt service. So we want to take that into account. We also have something called COS, cost of service. Cost of service is the allocation of cost. Every customer pays its fair share. Then we also have something called CF, that's cubic feet, and that equals 7.48 gallons. I did not create that unit of measurement, nor did anyone else in this room. That was something that came about through legacy in the water industry. I've always wondered to know why we use that as a measurement, but we do. Then we also have minor inches, that's for the raw water, ditch water, irrigation water customers. We also have something called AF, that's an acre feet. That one is a little bit easier to understand, it's visualize an acre. Foot of water, that's what we have in the wholesale world. That's what we talk about when we talk about wholesale rate. Then we have ALT, our zone, that's Auburn Lake Trails Wastewater Service Area. If you live in that area, you know about it. If you don't live in that area, then the discussion doesn't pertain to you. And then we have CDS, Community Disposal System for Zone Wastewater. That's another jargon term. Hopefully we captured all of them in that sheet. So rate study process, how do we do a rate study? So the first step we do is we have a board discussion where we ask ourselves, what are the things that we need to take into account, the policies, considerations? What are the factors that we want to make sure we address in this study? These studies, you don't want to do them all the time because they are expensive and time consuming. You want to do it once every 5 years. Let's get it straight. Next one is the financial plan. The financial plan is really about how much cash we need to generate to fund the enterprise. So there's operating costs, as we talked about, that's the gasoline in the metaphor. There's capital improvement plans, that's the tires, that's the brakes. You may also have debt. You have a mortgage, you have a debt service there. So you also have the debt that you need to pay. So these are all the things that we take into account when developing the financial plan. The financial plan is how much cash you need to generate on an annual basis. The next one is cost of service, that's the allocation of costs. So once we know how much revenue we want to collect from rates, then we want to make sure every customer pays its fair share. If we don't do that, then we would maybe consider a tax. And if we're a tax, then the voters need to approve that. So to avoid that, we need to make sure that everyone pays its fair share and we don't do cross subsidy. So that's one of the reasons why cost of service is so important. Next, we go to rate design, and that's the question of how should we collect the revenues and rates? And then we do the documentation. The documentation step number 5 has not been done yet. We're at step number 4. We're presenting information to you. We're seeking your input, your feedback. Based on all this series of discussions this week, then the board will decide whether to proceed or not with the development of the documentation. The documentation will have a lot of detail and nuance. This presentation is pretty in depth, but the documentation will even have more. For those of you who like a lot of numbers and to cross-check information. So Prop 218, that was a voter initiative in the 90s. Through a series of court cases, water and wastewater is considered a property-related service. So if you think about your property, if you don't have water, the value of your property turns to zero very quickly. So because of that, we want to make sure that what we only pay for is water service and that each customer is paying its fair share. We can't have one customer subsidize another one. So in this case, you want to make sure that the treated customers don't subsidize the raw water, the untreated, the irrigation ditch water, or the vice versa. We want to make sure each one pays its fair share. And as I mentioned, this cost of service should be done every 5 years. So now let's get into the discussion of treated and raw water. And I want to step back a little, because there's a lot of, we're gonna dive in, there's a lot of information here, and just get sort of, the 1,000 feet elevation view of what's going on here. So the first thing is that the last rate increase occurred in 2019. That was 5 years ago. We all know what happened in the last 5 years. And inflation has been over 19%. So, and on top of that, one of the challenges with running a water and wastewater system is that it's a very, what we call capital intensive. In that this is a very first, Georgetown's an older community, right? It's been established for 100 years. A lot of these assets are very old. So we're running a very old car. And that car now needs to be replaced. A lot of the engine needs to be replaced. Significant cost is having the timing belt needs to be replaced. And so now we're at that time period where we need to start replacing these large capital projects. So that costs a lot of money. And this challenge that Georgetown is facing is something that's facing throughout California and the United States. The infrastructure is just getting old. And it's time to repair it and replace it. In the past, the federal government has helped us out with that, or developers have helped out with that. Now that's changed. So more and more ratepayers, customers like you, need to pay for that. And that's the challenge that we're facing in this situation. And also water use has dropped. Now water use dropping would seem like a good thing in sense of cost, but the reality is that a water system and a wastewater system is a very fixed cost. We've got a fixed cost business because there's all this infrastructure, even though we're not there, that still needs to be in place. So we're paying for all of this assets, all these things, pipelines, treatment plants, pump stations, even though we don't use them, they still need to be there when we want to use them. So the challenge is that the current rate will not cover operating costs by 2025. So we won't be able to have money to pay for the gas, that's in my metaphor here. And the next one is that the district will be what we call technical default, won't be able to meet the obligations associated with issuing debt by 2026. So what does technical default mean? So that means that the credit rating of the agency will get degraded. It can't issue most likely debt in the future, or if it did, it would be very, very expensive interest. And the people who we borrow from could say we want our money back. So you didn't meet your side of the obligation. So we don't want to be in technical default, that's not a good situation. And if we left everything alone, we would run out of money by 2029. Now, of course, the district would most likely, if they didn't increase rates, they would cut costs, they would do different things. But what that means is that the service that you receive will be diminished. and the reliability of safe drinking water will be vulnerable. And anyone who's been into a country where you don't have safe drinking water knows the value of water. There's a famous saying of Mark Twain, we know what the value of a well is when it runs dry. So the question is how much revenue does the district need to keep safe, reliable water? That's the question we want to ask ourselves. So in order to do that, now we're getting into the numbers and the details, is that we look at our reserves. We want to make sure we have a certain amount of reserves to make sure that we can fund, so in case something goes wrong, emergencies. So we have different types of reserve. We have an operating reserve, capital replacement, emergency. That's $4.3 million. That's what we would like to have in the bank. You currently have 6.6 in the bank. So we're meeting our reserves, so that's a good thing. And some of you may say, well, why do we need so much money? I mean, that seems like a lot of money. I don't have money in my house. Well, let's look at the emergency reserve. So the emergency reserve is there in case something goes wrong. Fortunately, nothing happened here in this community, but we did have an incident of a fire. We all experienced that. And if a fire occurred, in this community, it doesn't occur, but if it did, then what would happen is that the district would still need to deal with costs. Now, the FEMA will help us eventually, but we have to cash flow that problem. And then eventually we get reimbursed. So that's why we need that $2 million to deal with that cash flow of FEMA. And we also have capital replacement. When we award our contract, we need to have that money in place so that we show that we can pay for it. So that's a 600,000 there. And then 1.7 is the operating costs. So when the district bills bi-monthly, but it pays staff, pays costs on a much more frequent basis. So the district only receives money in these 2 months periods, but it has costs all the time. So we need to have some money for our cash flow reasons. So that's why we want 4.3. As I mentioned, we're good here on reserve as of right now, but in the future, things does look dire if we don't change it. So the first thing we want to ask ourselves is how much capital do we need to spend each year to maintain this system? That $3.9 million is what we're saying we need over the next 5 years. As I mentioned, this is a challenge that a lot of agencies are facing throughout California. We have an aging infrastructure. You know how old your community is. Think about that pipeline. Think about that pump station that's 40 or 50 years old. That needs to be replaced eventually. Sure, we've done a great job with staff and maintenance of it, but that still needs to be replaced eventually. Second, now we have is our revenues. So we have the bars are our revenues. That black line is the bars are our expenditures. Excuse me, my apology. The black line is the revenues. And if you notice in 2025, the first year there, that black line is above the bars. That means we're meeting our expense. We're able to pay for the blue section, that's the operating cost. We're able to pay the debt service. We're able to pay for our capital improvement. But then the next year, if you notice, we're now not being able to pay for the capital. We could barely pay for the debt service. The following year, we're not even able to pay the debt service. And then 2028, we can't pay debt service. And then 2029, we're not even paying operating. So this is the current situation if nothing occurred. And this is a dire situation. And because of that, what happens is that our ending balance goes below our reserve targets, which in theory you could do for a short term. It does make the agency exposed to risk. If something goes wrong, now all of a sudden we'll have to automatically increase rates significantly. But by 2029 now we have a negative fund balance. That means we're insolvent. So, and of course the district would do something to avoid that, but at the jeopardy of safe, reliable drinking water 24/7, 7 days a week. And so we want to avoid that. Our goal, the #1 mission of this agency is to make sure water is safe and reliable 24/7, 7 days a week. That is the #1 mission. And the second one is to make sure that's as affordable as possible. So this is the challenge that we face. Challenge is the coverage ratio, that obligation, as I mentioned, that means, so the dotted line is the coverage ratio. Coverage ratio is an indicator of how much your revenues, your net revenues, and your debt service. It's a ratio between those two. It's what the credit rating agencies look at when you issue debt. You want to be above the 1.25, we're below it 2026 and onward, and that would be a detriment to the district. So financially, this is not a good situation. And that's what we want to change and solve that. And so we went through a series of workshops with the board. Originally, I proposed something much higher. We heard what the board said and what the public said. So we sharpened our pencil, we looked at the capital improvement plans, and this is the numbers that we came up with. Still significant, I'm not, I don't want to sugarcoat anything here. These are increases. The first year would be a 15% increase in revenue. And then the following years would be a 10% increase. And this would help us financially meet the obligation of the district, but then the ending fund balance, we're meeting that, we're good there, and we're meeting our coverage ratio. So this first section that I talked about was really about how much revenue we need to collect. The second section now is the allocation costs, and how much should these two different groups of customers pay, specifically treated water, and raw water, or ditch water, or irrigation water. How much should they pay? And again, we want to have a proportionality, we want to have a logic, rationality. We can't have one subsidize the other. If we did, then that would be a pass. So there are a lot of numbers here, a lot of nuances. The main point I'm trying to get at with the next slide and revenues, and ask ourselves, where do we allocate this? So we know that operating revenue, that's that volume budget I mentioned, is $5.3 million. The district does receive some interest earnings, some other sources of revenues, that's that 564. We have this capital requirement that I mentioned, that's to fund the improvement of the breaks in the system, you can say 726. We have two debt services that we need to make sure we take into account. That's the two Walton and the Sweetwater. We have hydro water and we have property tax. So we take into account all these factors. And what we know is that we need to, the rates for the first year with no increase, need to collect $4 million basically. And so now we ask ourselves, how do we allocate all these different components between these two customers, between treated and raw customers? And to do that, we start peeling back the onion and ask ourselves, well, what's the demand on these two systems? How much water is occurring on the treated? How much water is occurring on the raw? Take that into account. How many customers are there? We take that into account. Now, the other thing that we have to ask ourselves is the reliability between treated and raw water, should that be the same or should that be different? Well, we know that we want to make sure water is 100% reliable for indoor needs, right? We want to always have that. And we could technically cut off the raw water if something bad happened in a dire situation. Theoretically, we could do that. We also know that the raw water customers actually only receive the water 5 months out of the year. Treated customers, we receive it all the time, the other 7 months. So because of that nature, there's a higher reliability, there's a higher demand, higher need in some sense on the treated customers than on the raw. And that is a 7 times because treated water gets 7 months more than the untreated customers. So that's the factor that we use, that's the reliability factor. So based on this information, now we can start asking ourselves, okay, source and supply, what is that? That should be based on reliable usage. Raw water, reliable usage. Treated the debt service, well, raw water customers should not pay for that. That's on the treated side, 100% treated. Admin, customer service, that's the cost of issuing the bill, that should be based on connections. If there's additional hydro expense, that should be based on water. So what I'm getting at here, there's a lot of numbers and details, is that we went through a methodological process of asking ourselves what makes sense, what's rational, what's reasonable. We work with staff, the technical individuals here who understand the operations of the system to make sure that works. And this all is, and we have to do this because of Prop 218. So we want, and it's also good. It's just, it's making sure that each customer pays its fair share. But I don't think anyone wants one customer subsidizing another. So we do the same exercise that's operating. We do the same exercise with the capital projects. We go through all this exercise there. And then now we can start asking ourselves, okay, operating revenue, what's the allocation, revenue offset, allocation, capital, debt service, hydro. property tax, we start doing that. And then we can say, well, treated customers, based on all this math, and if you're interested, you have the presentation, you can follow the math and get your calculator out, and check my numbers. 90% of the revenue should be come from treated customers, 10% should come from raw. That's the math, what the math says. And then we ask ourselves, well, what's occurring right now? How much are we collecting from treated? How much are we collecting from raw? Well, it looks like treated customers should actually pay slightly less. Slightly less, without that revenue adjustment, without the financial plan, they should pay slightly less, and the raw customers should pay slightly more. Just to make sure that everyone's aligned and that. So the raw customers, right now, they should pay 4.6%, a little bit higher. Just based on the cost allocation, just to make sure each customer pays its fair share. Now, it's typical whenever you do a study like this, a cost of service, things change, there's a realignment because costs has changed over time. And this is normal in my process. The rates that we're looking at, just for clarification, will be effective January 2025, but you won't see it on your bill until March, because it's the consumption that occurs in January onward. And you won't see that bill until March, and that's when you see what you've been paying for in January, February. So once we've asked ourselves how much revenue we want to collect in order to meet the financial obligations to make sure the water is safe and reliable, then we ask ourselves, well, we want to make sure no one's subsidized, everyone pays its fair share. Next question is, well, what kind of rate structure can we do? One of the concerns and the challenges that I was given was affordability. How do we do this? How do we create a rate structure given these challenges that we're facing that's still affordable? It's hard to make it affordable for everyone, right? But we can try to make it affordable within Prop 218 to certain groups of customers that we feel that may, that we're a little bit more concerned about. And so that's what we try to do. So we first maintain a uniform rate structure. We have we're recommending that the bi-monthly charge, that the meter charge, be different between a 3/4 and a 5/8 and a 1 inch. So most of you have a 3/4, 5/8 inch meter. Some of you may have a 1 inch, and we're going to get that information on your bill. But the 1 inch meter customers tend to be the ones that have a water sprinkler. So if you have a water sprinkler in your house, then you most likely you do have a 1 inch meter. If you have an older house, and a relatively small lot, then you most likely have a 5/8, 3/4 inch meter. And those are, and the meter size is basically the amount of capacity that can go into your house. And it's sort of like internet bandwidth, like when you talk like what kind of internet bandwidth do I want to have, what's the download speed, you can buy different packages. This is the same thing in some sense. It's like how much water can you use? The treated supplemental charge, we're recommending that to be based on meter size instead of by account. And we maintain the low discount rate. Actually, with the low discount rate, we are recommending to increase that discount to customers over time as we go. We know that these rate increases are dramatic. So for those of you who qualify for that program, definitely, or you haven't been involved, we recommend you to be involved in that program. It takes out, you qualify based on the care program. And so now what we've done is we combine the financial plan, the cost of service, and get the rates. And as I mentioned, this is a 15% increase in revenue first year, and then the following year is a 10% increase. And so now these are the rates. So these rates are bi-monthly. You are billed bi-monthly, meaning some of you may not know that or do know that. So you have the current charge. One of the things you'll notice is that the 5/8, 3/4, and 1 inch, it's all 61.76. That's the current rate. The proposed rate now, that 5/8, 3/4 is $72.32. It is an increase, right? Of course, of $11. But if you notice, the 1 inch goes up much more, and all the other meter size go up much more substantially. As I mentioned, most of you have a 5/8, 3/4 inch meter. So you won't see the brunt of this increase, while the larger meters, which tend to be government and large institutions, they'll see that brunt of that increase. Then we have the low income base rate. If you notice that 50% of the bi-monthly base charge That program is actually expanding over time. And we recommend you, if you qualify to use that program. It's a great program. Supplemental charge. If you notice that $30 fine, regardless of meter size currently, what we're recommending is changing that by meter size. So now it actually drops with 5/8 by $7. Now it's 23.64. Now, if you're a 1 inch or larger, of course, you'll see an increase. And then we also have the usage. Now, one of the things that we want to make sure everyone understands is that there's really three components of your bill. There's the base charge, the supplemental charge, and the usage charge. If you combine the base and supplemental, which is a fixed charge, this is what you see. So now, because the supplemental went down, base went up, we netted those together, it's basically a $4 increase. So in the first year, 5/8 3/4 will go up by $4. Now, if you're a 1 inch customer, you will see a much more substantial increase. But again, the 1 inch customers are those who tend to have newer houses that have fire sprinklers. And then if you're a larger meter, government institution, then you'll be paying more. And now the question you most likely want to ask yourself is, okay, you gave me a lot of information here, hopefully informative, but what does this mean to me as a customer? How much more am I paying? That's why I'm here. So if you're a 5/8 inch meter, you have the different usages right there. You have your current bill, you have the proposed bill, you have the dollar difference and the percent change. And most of you would be in the 5/8 category. And as you can see, remember I said that we need a 15% increase in revenue, but there's no 15% there. Some of you may actually only see a 5% increase in your water charge. And that is because most of the increase are occurring on the larger meters. The larger meters have more ability to use water instantaneously. So those customers, the larger meters, the 1 inch, you can see that it is a much more substantial increase. But this addresses affordability concerns for the smaller meter sizes, which are you. And I forgot to show you over here. I showed you the number of customers. There's a number of meters right there, all the way on the right hand side. It says 3,046 and then 439. That's the predominant meters in this community. There are 273 meters that are 1 inch. But not, and like I said, those are all the new houses with fire sprinklers. So any house that you saw that's new, they have a fire sprinkler, they have a 1 inch. If you have an older house, by default, you're most likely to do that. So raw water customers next, we want to talk about. So we're recommending keeping the same billing methodology, minors, inches. Now, one interesting nuance is that there are 8 customers in the district that do not contribute to the property tax to this agency. And in the past study that I didn't do, that consultant forgot about those customers. So they treated them as those. So now we want to correct that. Because, you know, why should you, taxpayer money, pay for that when they didn't pay anything? So we want to make sure they don't get any of the property tax. So there's 8 of them. And then again, the 15 and 10. So what's happened now is that the 1 inch, minor inch is $77, goes up to $91.72. If you're a 1 inch, it goes from $154 to $183. Now, if you're outside customer, those 8 customers, if you happen to be one of them, you know, those will go up substantially because they won't get the property tax. So they go up from 7, you can see how much your property tax contributes here. They would go from $77 to $160.62 for a half inch, or 321 for 1 inch. And then you can see the change in the percentage. Yes,
Let me make one correction.
please.
On that, it says 1 is per minors inch per bill. That is actually per month.
Yeah, there's 5 months. 5 bills.
No, we don't get 5 bills. We get,
It's per month.
we get every 2 months, and then 1 month, we get a third bill. So what I'm saying is that is per miner's inch,
Per month.
but then it says per miner's inch per month, not per bill.
Okay,
That's the only correction I found.
so we can put that in next.
Just, we change per month.
Yeah, okay. So we've talked about water. Now we're gonna talk about zone wastewater. I'm looking at you, Nicholas, to see if you want me to continue on with this, or you wanna,
We can take questions on the water if you guys,
is there any questions about water? So we're just gonna talk about water right now, and then we'll talk about zone wastewater.
Don't have any questions. We have to leave, so, I can see you up in the other meeting tomorrow night.
do you live in ALT by chance?
No.
Then, so everything that we covered would pertain to you. The rest of the presentation only pertains to the ALT customers. So you didn't miss, you won't have missed anything at this point.
So I'll do the same presentation tomorrow. So if you like the concert, come back, we'll do a second act. But it's the same songs. I'm just gonna let you know.
I don't need to hear it twice.
Okay, well, then you know what to do.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Could you just tell us your name, sir?
Thomas,
You, Thomas.
I reside in ALT. How would I find out what size pipe comes into my water?
So you can reach out to the district and all this, my name is Nicholas Schneider, I'm the general manager. You can reach out to the district at any point. We are working on trying to figure out how to get it on your bill so you can see what it is. 92% of our customers are 3/4 or 5/8. So unless you are in that 8%, that would be the only ones who would be the bigger ones.
What's your name, sir?
But reflecting
Steve Thomas,
the value of our pipe would be fire protection.
correct.
So what we're supposed to do is get rid of fire protection in our house to get cheaper water.
No, it's not our issue. It's a coding, a plumber's coding issue from the county.
So a new house will require.
They have fire sprinklers within the house. So these are,
have the option to downsize.
unfortunately, that's not up to us. That we don't set those standards. It's the same sprinklers that you have in this building would be the 1-inch houses. So any of the new, I think it's 2021 or 22.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. I don't know what size mine is.
You can also open your meter box and have right a base bit meter.
Okay, I could do that. The interesting financial background. The last bullet point is significant reduction in prior year water demand.
Could you,
If you increase the rates as proposed, you don't think that's going to decrease water demand?
could you say what page you were on so I can?
Let's see.
It's not right here.
It's kind of after Proposition 218. So I think it's water financial plan background. So again, the premise here that I'm kind of wondering about, you're projecting revenue when you've already demonstrated significant reduction in prior year water demand. You increase the rates, you may not meet your target. Is that been considered?
So what we're considering here, and much of what this is the charge to get the water to your home. The consumption of that water is a separate marker. So that is, we operate on the infrastructure. It's the pipes, it's the canals, it's the people, it's the pieces.
Yeah.
Those are all calculated in the base charge. And then when somebody uses, we charge them a consumption rate based on how much water they're using. So that what you're saying there is we want to reduce the demand, but we still have to get water to everybody's house. So we still have to pay for the infrastructure.
Yeah, so if you increase rates as proposed, you may reduce revenue.
So unlikely, because what we're saying is we're raising that base charge for to pay for the infrastructure.
You can say here in your own premise is that there's been reduced demand. Why would there be reduced demand?
So the reason why,
Let's just speak out your
yes,
premise.
the reason why there's reduced demand in the past is that we had 2 significant droughts that occurred in California. And the state mandated water restriction.
So we're gonna reduce.
So it's already happened.
Yes, but as you go forward, you increase rates, will that not reduce demand, and therefore lower revenue?
So typically, based on my experience of doing this, I've done like hundreds and hundreds of these studies, is that people, this is called price elasticity or change in demand.
Okay.
And most people don't really change their consumption that much. From that, where they do change their consumption is when the state and the drought and the pictures of, no snow. Remember in 2015, there was no.
You don't think it's monetarily based? And the reason I say that is when I look at your numbers, in 5 years, the rates are gonna double.
Yeah,
You don't think that's gonna reduce demand?
I don't think it will have a material effect in changing demand.
So you're,
It's like double the price of gas. If you make gas $9 a gallon, how many people are gonna be driving the same time?
but that's a consumption.
It's a discretionary item. I think water can be also, that's the point.
So what we're showing, there's two different things that you're looking at and we're looking at. Is it's a base charge, that's how much it costs to get the water to you. Then there's a consumption. So you're still gonna own the car, you may drive less, but you still have to pay for the car. And that's the infrastructure to get the water to you. You may go on less vacations, you may drive differently, which is the same as what you're saying, is people may take a garden out. But materially, that is not gonna change how much it costs to run the infrastructure.
People drill a well.
They have that option. And getting a well permit and drilling a well may be financially offsetting for them, or it may not be.
Well, when you see this kind of increase year after year after year, I understand your challenge, don't get me wrong. I understand the lack of revenue for infrastructure, inflation.
Yes, sir.
But when you're talking about raising the rates, 10% per year.
So it's not 10% to you, though. It's, but it's 10% globally. So well, you could.
I didn't listen more.
Let me, I want you to I don't want you to leave upset or not
No,
feeling.
I just think when you see these increases, when they get out to the public and they
Sure.
really see what's going on.
So when you,
they've been notified by this.
yes. So when you look at, I want you to look at page. I want you to look at page 29. Okay, so 29 is a pretty telling piece as to how much it's going to cost the individual homeowner over a billing cycle. So this is what the change is going to be per billing cycle in the first year. So if you look at a 5/8 meter, which again, 92% of the customers here are 5/8 meters. So I'm not going to guarantee that you are one, but it's a likelihood that you are. If you're a very low water user, you're going to see about a $5 per billing cycle. So it's every 2 months increase in your bill, or 5%. So not 15 or 10%. And then even if you're a very high water user, you have the most lush garden and it's like walking into, the rainforest at your house, you will see about a $25 per billing cycle increase, or about an 11% increase. Do you see that on the top there?
That isn't it, it's only a year.
That is 1 year.
So the next year, how much is going to be?
So is it like another?
10, it will be 10%.
It will be 10% from the original at that point, but not 10% more, not 10% more though.
That's my comment. That is a big number when you think about it over time. If someone came to me and told me anything else I was going to consume. I mean, are we going through that right now with inflation and sector people's perspective on how much it costs to live?
Sure.
So we're going to say now water's going to cost you 10% more per year.
So just like you have inflation, everybody here, we all face inflation as well. So when you go to the store and your milk costs more, we go to the store and a piece of pipe costs more. So a lot of the stuff that we use is based on the plastics market, because plastic pipe, plastic this. So you made reference gas, and I'm just going to use that as a metric. Every time you see the gas prices go up, all of our material costs go up proportionally with that gas price.
That makes sense.
And so to get you and the rest of your neighbors and the rest of our constituents a clean product, a reliable product, so that every time you go to that tap and turn it on, and there's always going to be water there that's safe for you. This is what we're trying to say. It's going to cost to do that.
Okay, this is all on the table.
Nicholas, did I hear that these percentages are not to exceed, but can be less than?
Correct. So I'll just address that comment real quick, and I don't mean to cut either one of you off. The 15% in the first year is to get us to where we can be. And on the back chair, there is a sheet that is a grant sheet. You can take it with you. It's other sources of funding revenue that we can bring into the district. We've been pretty successful. In my first 2 years here, we brought in almost $3 million, and we have about $29 million kind of pending, and $13 million that's really close, like within a couple of weeks or months to come into the district. Those can help offset the need to do the full 10% in the future. So that would be something where maybe we only need a 2%, maybe we need a 5%. And we can go back and look at those numbers every year and say, hey, maybe we don't need this full 10%. Let's just do a smaller increase. And that would maybe answer some of your questions well.
Carolyn Loomis, I have a question on page 30.
Yes.
Actually, at the top of the page, it says 29 under the box.
Okay.
It's showing low usage, median, average, high.
Yes.
Does this change every 2 months depending on how much water you're using? Like if you're using more in the summer to water
Yes.
outside?
Yes. So theoretically, in the wintertime, you're using less water. So you're gonna be a low water user. In the summertime, if you like a lush garden, you may be an average or a moderate user. And you know, there are some customers who will always be low water users. I'll use an example of an irrigation customer who has irrigation water. You probably don't fluctuate very far away from where you are using indoor water because you're using irrigation water to do your garden or do other things. But yes, it could fluctuate throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
We did get a question, and I'll answer it after you go, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Scott Harris. Just to clarify, from what I understand in the conversation we just had with Steve, I think it was, these numbers are basically to deliver the water to give it to your meter.
So the base charge, when you see the word base charge, that is what that's.
So this is like, it doesn't take into account the usage, you just show the low, medium, and high as a instance per instance, correct?
So the low, medium, high actually does include the
Yeah.
usage portion of that.
Okay.
So it's the
the
base
full.
charge plus the usage.
Right.
And then the usage you can see on, just for everybody's edification, on 27, the very bottom shows the usage rate for a cubic foot of what will happen with that usage rate.
But those are just for instance, so people can kind of get a feel.
Yes, we want you to understand your bill
Right.
as much as we can before you get it.
And then I have one more question, slide number 7. It shows, third thought down, substantial 5-year plan capital expenditures. Do you have those in any sort of form that could be published so we can see what those are?
The capital.
Oh, yes, it's part of our budget. So we submit a budget every year. And we have a 5-year and a longer term capital improvement plan that we have placed within that budget. So it's public information. It's on our website.
It is, okay.
You're welcome to look at it on our website, or you're welcome to come in and we can walk through it together.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I think you're the last, unless the gentleman back there, you're the last one.
I'm Barbara Laurie. I had a question about the analysis process.
Can you tell us what page?
Report.
Which page?
That is where,
Oh, okay.
I know that we accepted these bids. Where do we find the information of the cost of this analysis process in the final report?
The cost of his bid is also on our website. We have an RFP that we put out seeking bids.
What's RFP?
Oh, I'm sorry, RFP would be request for proposal, thank you. We received 2 companies that bid on our project. One was NBS, and I don't know what their acronym stands for, I'm sorry. And we received one from Mr. Guar. And we chose Mr. Guar because he was approximately $55,000 less than the other company. And I believe his 95,000, I want to say, potentially. I would have to give you, I can't quote you on that, but I would get it for you. If you would like.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. And another question is, what is that supplemental tax? What does that cover?
Supplemental fee pays for the Sweetwater treatment plant that is located on Sweetwater Trail here, and it serves water to both ALT and then the surrounding area here in Cool, Pilot Hill. So it's a water treatment plant that needed to be upgraded due to some water quality issues.
So those that use that water are different rate than those of us that are on the whole.
The whole district pays for that.
The whole district pays for Sweetwater, even though it's related to only one.
Correct.
Thank you.
And for how many more years?
Till 2039. And so once that 2039 hits, that supplemental charge will fall off as part of your base charge.
Any further? Okay, any online?
There was one question that was submitted, so I will just answer unless we did have an online question. Do we have any, Liz?
Yeah, Cindy left. Kathy did have a hand up at one point. I don't know if she still wants to get. Kathy, did you want to deliver comment or ask a question?
Comment.
Yeah.
Okay, while somebody's waiting, I'll just ask this question. We did have a question submitted was, will you be raising the low income credit? And to answer your question is we calculated that anybody who is currently on the low income credit will receive currently they receive 25% off their bill. And we've calculated to raise that to approximately 50% off of your bill. So there will be an increase in the low income rate credit. Oh, sorry.
When do these rates start?
We are looking to start these rates January 1st. That will be when we start calculating the new numbers. You will not see it as a bill number until March. So the March billing is when you'll start to see the increase.
Yeah, Rory has a question.
What qualifies as a low income?
If you qualify for the CARES program through PG&E, that would be one of the monikers. We have several, and I'll get back to you with the rest of them. I don't have them off the top of my head, but unless Jessica knows some of the other ones, just as a finance manager. Do you know the low income credit qualifications are?
It's any state subsidy. So if you're on Medi-Cal, food stamps, any health and human services, low income subsidy, it's the federal poverty line standards. So we go off of the federal guidelines for 200% below poverty level. So usually a lot of people up here submit their PG&E bill because if you're part of the CARE plan, you've already fulfilled that requirement. So we just take their word for it that they've verified your income. Otherwise, you can submit your social security statement that shows what your annual income is for the first page of your 1040 tax report that shows that you're below 200% level poverty. And it's 25% off the base fee that's regulated by the county. We can't, so that even though the base fee is going up, it's still 25%, so it goes up also.
I see no further questions on this portion of the presentation, but we have one final segment, most specifically targeted for ALT residents. Sanjay?
Thank you. So now we're going to be talking about the zone wastewater or ALT wastewater. This is a bit more challenging, this side of the house, in that the last rate increase occurred in 2018. Since that, inflation has been 21% over. And the real challenge here is that there's been a credit that was been provided to these groups of customers. There was, I wasn't involved in the past, but it appeared that there was quite a bit of revenue that was generated, was requested to have a refund or a credit that was given. That credit, the refund was overextended. And now we have this imbalance. And that imbalance is that expenses are 3 times higher than revenues. Revenues generate 200,000, expenses 600,000. So right off the bat, that's a significant increase that needs to occur. And the wastewater fund will run out of money by 2026. So the question is how much revenue do we need to generate to dispose wastewater in a safe manner? First, we ask ourselves, what are the reserves that are needed for this? In this side of the house, there isn't as much liability. Also, we wanted to make sure we kept the reserve target as low as possible so that we don't have as much of a rate shock to these customers as it is already. So we have operating, we have some capital, not much, 13,000, emergency 50,000. So 235,000 is the reserve target here. Here's the capital plan associated with this group of customers. As you know, there's only really 2 years of that. So there's no expenditures in the out years. This is more of an operating cost. There's some stuff that needs to be fixed in the near term. Operating wise, this is that challenge that I mentioned where the expenditures are basically 600,000. Revenues, that black line is around 200,000. A little bit more. We have this imbalance. That black line needs to be above the blue line. Or the water side of the house has to be a bank and fund this side. And because of that, we basically have a negative fund balance. And by 2026 and onward, it's negative. That means you would have to be borrowing money from the water customers in order to fund this enterprise. And eventually we'll have to pay back. So in order to deal with this challenge, we're recommending it is significant, 155 increase in the first year. And then once we get to that steady state, then do a 5% each year after that. By doing that, then we're meeting our reserve targets. We're actually still eating into the reserves. But we're still above the reserve target in the out years. The next question we want to ask ourselves is what's the cost to provide this service? There are different types of customers in the wastewater system. It's actually a little more complicated than it is. So we have the CDS customers. There's 2 of them. There's developed lots, undeveloped lots. We have the non-CDS customers. There are developed and undeveloped lots. We know the number of customers, as you can see right here, is a total of 1,085. We have the different types of them there. We take that into account. We also ask ourselves, we work with staff, we look at the budget and we ask ourselves, what are the budgetary costs associated with these different services? So how much does it cost to provide CDS operating? How much does it cost to provide non-CDS operating? What's the permitting cost? There is a permitting cost associated with that. And then the capital improvement. And then different customers pay for different shares based on if they benefit from that. So basically CDS customers, they all have to pay the permit and CIP. If you are a developed lot, then you pay the CDS O&M. That's what that tax means. The bi-monthly fee for non-CDS. If you're a developed lot, you only pay the non-CDS O&M and you pay the permit. Undeveloped only pays permit. You don't not pay for the capital improvement plan. Based on that information, we can now start developing what we call unit rates with different costs. We add up, we know how much each customer should pay. This is without any revenue adjustments. This is without the 150. This is that true up, the cost allocation plan. Then we add that together and we get the rates. So the current rate is $99.77. The developed lot, it jumps up to $186. Undeveloped lots basically stay the same, $35.20 to $35.81. Developed lots, non-CDS go from $22.19 to $68.93, and then undeveloped lots go up slightly. Now, as I mentioned, there has been a credit provided. That credit, it has been more given to the non-CDS developed lots. I've been told that if the credit wasn't there, the rate would be more around $50. But every customer did receive some portion of the credit. And the challenge here is that overextension of that credit that's been given. So what does that mean to these customers if you're in the ALT zone wastewater system? There's 2 parts of this table here. The first part shows the current WW is wastewater bill, proposed bill, dollar change, percent change. You see that, and then the question is, well, what does this mean plus with water? So we've added both those 2 components together, and you can see the dollar change and the percent change there. It depends, and this is assuming that you're a 5/8 inch meter and you're using the average use of water. That's it for that presentation. So now we can answer questions associated with ALT and zone wastewater.
I wanted to ask a question. If you understand the benefit of the LT, Mr. Dodd and Carolyn, I'm not sure about this gentleman. I didn't understand it before I was on the board what CDS meant. It's basically those, I live in ALT, that live around the golf course that have access to the water, wastewater treatment plant. So if you don't live around the golf course, you're probably not affected by that larger increase. So I just wanted you to know, I didn't know for 10 years if I was CDS or not.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I'm assuming it's a smaller lot as you come in.
You all, the first, the gate one,
Yeah, because it's a small lot, you can't really have a septic tank there, right?
right? So did you know if you were on CDS or not?
I did not, I'm up in the hills and I.
Yeah, so you're not CDS.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you knew before you got,
Appreciate that.
sticker shock.
The reason for the need is because the ground doesn't percolate right there very well, so we have to move it to a different area.
Gotcha.
Okay, I am on the non-CDS. And I'm paying $22.19 a month now, so we're tripling that.
Correct.
What do we get for that?
The same thing you've always gotten, but we haven't been able to, we've been. As was stated, there's been a bit of a subsidy in the past and it was over calculated. So the operating or the maintenance of the facility has not been paying enough to cover the costs of the district. So we've been losing money every year.
So what we get is once a year inspection. And they essentially test the sludge level in the tank and tell us if we need to have it cleaned out or not.
So a majority of what you're paying for is the permit costs. Because we still have to submit a report to the state to show what we're doing. So yes, the operations and maintenance portion of it is the dipping, the sludge levels and all that. And then we have to come back and do a permit requirement. That's a WDR or waste discharge requirement permit that was mandated by the state for us to manage that permit. And so that is what we have to manage and that is what this charge pays.
Well, way back, we were being overcharged. And
Correct.
instead of returning money to people that were overcharged, we got on this credit plan.
Correct.
And there was too much money in reserves. And now you're saying it's been spent down.
Correct.
And how do we get off this? If we wanted to hire our own person to inspect our tank, how can we get out of this?
We tried.
You tried it. How can I get off it?
So I don't know if the board wants me to share, but there is an option for the community itself to take the system over. And there would be several, things you have to do, and it would be the same thing that we would have to do. It is an option. It's a much more expensive option. And I'm not gonna say how much more because I couldn't even begin to guess. But what we're doing here is this is just to do the basic of the system. $300,000?
235 is our reserve.
Oh, sorry, 235 is where we're at now. We're gonna be going for not the huge 1.2 million that we had before.
And then after this increase, it's going to increase again, 10% every.
5%.
5%.
5% every year after that.
So if we need it though. That's the same as the previous discussion on water. If it's not needed, we can go 1%, we can go 2%, we can freeze the rates if they really are not needed. But that is just to look at the long-term financial viability of the system.
Okay, you're talking about a system, but I'm not on the one that.
I wish it was different. We tried really, really hard to get the systems separated. The county got pushed back against us. The state pushed back against us. Kind of the long and short of it, there was a lawsuit back in 1984. The community sued the district and the judge mandated the district to be the arbiter of the system, of the entire wastewater system. And because of that lawsuit, because it's an adjudicated lawsuit, we cannot give it back to the county for them to put it on their system. That is, we paid about $50,000 to try to figure out every which way from Sunday to try to give it back to the county so that those folks in the non-CDS areas don't have to have these yearly inspections.
So right now I am paying for my inspection plus a permit plus the people who are CDS.
You are not paying anything for CDS. If you look at
on page 44.
page 43. Yeah, so page 43, if you look at where the X's are on this sheet right here, you would see that if you're a non-CDS customer, you pay for the O&M, which is when they come and inspect your tank, your annual inspection, and you pay for permit management. Those are the only two pieces of the puzzle that you pay for. If you're a CDS customer, you pay for the CDS O&M, you pay for the permit management, and you pay for the capital improvement plan or the CIP. So you won't pay for any of the large projects that have to go and be established to maintain the leach field, to maintain any of the pumping stations. All you're doing is paying for your annual inspection and the permit management costs.
Why is that going up so much now and every year? Why?
It's just the cost of operating the district.
For having a person come around and check the things?
Well, there's 1,000 of you. So we have to go around to 1,000 different customers every year and have them
I
inspected.
don't understand why that costs so much more this year than last year.
Well, so last year we were losing money. So we weren't making enough revenue we were writing checks, but not having enough money to come back in. So we were starting to go, our checking account was starting to dwindle. So we have to make sure that there's enough money in the checking account so we can pay the bills. So that credit, we dipped into the reserves for about 5 years.
Thanks for those questions. Those are good questions, Carolyn.
It's a big hit.
Yes, the rates should have been going back to where they should have been before the credit, somewhere close to $50 for the last few years, but paying only around $20 for the last few years is causing up to go near $70 to play catch up now.
But we had a surplus in the reserves at the time.
Yeah,
All that happened.
right.
And we were asking for a refund.
And we got it.
And we got a credit, but
It would have been the same thing. The refund was given to you and in the form of the credit. So you paid less money than you should have been paid. So that was your refund. And that's so to give money back to people is very, very difficult. And it verges on gifting public funds back to people, because if we don't give it to the right people, then we have a problem moving forward. If we make the service charge a credit or give a credit to the service charge for those customers, then we can pay back that overage. But unfortunately, it appears that the district paid back that overage a little bit too long.
Thank you. To follow up further on what she said, it was a comment from you that said for about 5 years we've been dipping. Wasn't it 5 years ago that they were given the credit? So we've been dipping in the reserves that whole entire time?
Correct.
So it was never done correctly in the first place?
I'm so sorry.
It was never evaluated correctly in the first place?
It was evaluated to be dipping into the, that was the plan, was to dip into the reserves and to take from the reserves to reduce so we had this much money in the checking account, we only needed this much. So we're gonna try to get down to this level, but we went to this level.
Okay, so one of the comments I made to Sandra last night was, when is our reevaluation? And tonight it's coming up again. We have grants that come in, we have all these other things that will be great. How soon are we going to do another rate evaluation to decide if we need to have those?
So every year, this will be reconsidered by the board of directors. And staff can evaluate the financial viability of the district. And then as a district, every 2, 3, or 4 years within this plan, we can have somebody outside, a third party, come in and say, hey, here's where you're at. And, we recommend you either stick with the plan or you reduce the plan, or we have a whole new plan. Say we have, God forbid, the dam has an issue. We may have to come back and say to raise rates again. And I'm not, please don't take that to the bank. I'm just using that as a really bad example. And that we would have to bring somebody like Sanjay back in and say, to pay for that, you would need to do this. Or Sanjay could come in and those grants that are on that sheet, we got every one of the grants and we've got $40 million in grants. And Sanjay says, hey, you covered your whole CIP for the next 6 years. You don't need to raise the rates to 10%. You only need to raise the rates 2% or 1.5%. And so that's how we reevaluate. So we can reevaluate on any time frame that the board would like to do that. So my recommendation would be staff would evaluate in year 2, and then maybe have him somebody come back like Sanjay in year 3 and say, hey, we're looking good. You don't need to raise. And then in year 4 and 5, we would also do a staff evaluation after his recommendation in year 3.
And this is what the board will be voting on to do.
So that would be a board,
Meetings.
that would be, at the meetings, I would have a board decision to either bring back a consultant or utilize internal evaluation.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
And I want to add that you as a public can suggest to the board whether or not you want that third party evaluation. So that's your power as the public is to suggest that.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's a check and balance, because we don't need a 15-year cycle.
We can only do this for 5 years. And it has to reevaluate every 5 years. We cannot raise rates past 5 years.
No, I know, but we've already got 10 where we are now.
How was 10?
2018, I'm sorry, I have my time frame before.
Yeah, but that was a previous plan. This is
That 5 years, it's taken us to now, we're at 9 years. We don't need another 5 years before another evaluation.
I understand. And we will not, as long as I am here, I will assure you that that will not happen again.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Can you make it to the microphone or?
I think we're okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Everybody can hear me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
What's your name, sir?
I'm curious, we haven't talked much about the raw water and the condition of Stumpy Meadows. And as far as its reserves are concerned and so forth. What's the status on that?
In regard to the reserve money?
No, I'm talking about the raw water.
Correct. I guess what is your, it's a very general question. So there's a lot of answers that I could talk to you for 2 hours about.
How much water is left in Stumpy?
There's about 93% in Stumpy right now.
Okay, are there any plans to sell more of it off like you did last year, about 2, 3 years ago?
We would like to evaluate that on a yearly basis if we have enough water. And if we were able to do that, it would actually help reduce these water rates.
Did it help last time?
It was used to fulfill CIP and actually the answer to your question is yes, because we haven't had a rate increase in a number of years. And so that money was indirectly used to offset those rates to get us through that time.
There's nothing planned this immediately to be.
And this year we are past the window of agreeing to a transfer. We would have to wait till next year.
Okay. The only other question I have is how do we get your crew to do their job?
That's
Maintaining
another.
pipes.
Can
You're
you,
supposed to be maintaining the pipe feeding our ditch water. And it's never never gets taken care of like it's supposed to be.
if we could talk offline, I'd be happy to find out where and when and
Okay.
see what we can do to help.
Spend some time, I'll come and talk to you one day.
I can even meet you at your place. Be happy to.
I see no more questions online or in my presence. Any- At this time, I'll close it for public comment and questions. And now open it up to the board members for closing comments or statements. Director.
I've got some questions, absolutely. Let's start with this, 564, this is for Sanjay, there we are. 564,181 revenue offset, what's the breakdown on what that is?
Can you tell us what page? Oh, you already know.
Yeah, that's predominantly, interest earned.
Okay, well, what's the rest of it?
I don't have that
Oh,
detail.
I know it is. It's,
But look, is it the interest earned according to the budget's 350, right?
it's interest earned, it's penalties, it's all of the, miscellaneous revenues. I can show you on the budget when I talk to you. It's basically all of the things that are not property tax and not water rates that are revenues.
Okay, you got $606,000 in there, is that what we're gonna put into CIP every year? Is that what that represents?
What page?
Your guess is good as mine.
Sorry?
It's on the revenue thing. Well, I can't read those little ones. Okay, we've got where the revenue, it talks about the revenue.
Can you move
Hey.
that?
Do we know what slide number it is?
If you're asking about the capital improvement plan, Mike,
Yeah,
on page 18, it has the capital number in there. It's 726. I don't know where the 606, if you're seeing that. What page is he on?
hold on.
Is it slide 9?
He's looking at the
Is in the
slide.
606,
Water.
Yeah, I have that.
and it's
What slide is it?
Yeah, there it is. Look on page, what?
9.
9.
Page 9. Page 9.
It's on the looking.
Oh. That's what it is now. Yes,
That's the reserve target.
the reserve target, to hold that much in reserve, yes. In case for an emergency. So that's not what we're putting in.
That's the CIP contribution every year, right? That's not for an emergency, that's, they go into CIP, it's what it says.
Average, 5-year average
So
CIP.
that $606,000 is what we're saying that you should have set aside so that you can award contracts. It's not it's just money you put in the bank on the side.
Well, where's the money that we're gonna put towards CIP every year?
It's on page 18, 726,000. Right there, third line down, capital requirement.
18.
If you look behind you, Mike. See, it says operating requirement, operating revenue offset, and then and capital requirement. It'd be the
Okay.
capital requirement.
That's how much I'm gonna put into CIP, towards CIP every year?
That is correct.
That's for the first year.
Is that
It should
the,
average, its average is about to be, it's about 700.
is that the pencil sharpening you were doing?
Yes,
Well, then what's that 606 that we're just sticking in?
it's how much you should have in the bank to be able to start a project. So if you're getting a grant, you need money to do the engineering before you get the first grant check back. It's the,
But why would that come out of CIP? Like,
it does, but you still need to have money in the bank to pay for it. So you're asking, yes, the 700,000 will go in and it will cover that, but you need to maintain 606 in the capital reserve to start the projects.
but what you're saying is towards capital project, we're putting 606 plus the 720.
No.
We're saying that you need to have in your savings account some money set aside.
Well, we have millions in there now. Okay, well, the millions in there now, why, I don't understand what those two numbers are.
All it is saying you need to maintain this amount of money within your savings account. It's that the 606 is just it's a policy decision based on the 120 days plus the reserve requirement. It's not an amount of money that we put in every year.
So that's not attached to the rates?
That is correct.
No, not
That is correct.
All right. Now, the 7, whatever it was.
726.
That is.
That is
correct.
exactly.
All right, now I got it. Okay, I got another, question. And this is, it's a small amount in the grand scheme of things. However, we have $811,000 in the restricted fund for ALT treatment plant.
Treatment plant.
Well, it's not, so none of those are calculated as part of the CIP. You're talking about,
No, I'm on a different thing.
I know you're talking about zone.
You mean the fund,
No.
112?
Okay,
The treatment plant loan,
okay,
that account, that restricted account, we have $811,000 in,
Okay.
correct?
I'd have to, I mean, I would have to look, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay, well, that's what it said on here.
Wait, what page?
Geez.
Well, on the old one, it was page 8.
Well, I guess my page numbers don't drive with the new page numbers, and I can't see the little ones. Page 8. Oh, you say it's page.
That, the supplemental, that's the reserve, that's restricted.
Yeah, that's a restricted reserve account, yes.
That's to pay for the last debt service. So when you ever issue a debt, you need to have the last 2 payments. You have to have the last payments set aside to pay for that debt.
Right,
You
the
make
payments, okay, well, here's where I'm going with this. The payments are right in the ballpark of $293,000 twice a year.
Yes,
Okay, so that only comes out to, hold on, I got it, on the page, I wrote that on. Just to go here. No, I wrote it on one of these pages, I think. Give me a second, I gotta find it. Close enough. I think this, no, this is not it.
can I answer? I don't think we need the actual numbers, Director.
Yeah,
I might be able to help you. What he's trying to say is this money is in the account. When you make your last payment, you make
I get that. I get that. What I'm, in order to make the payment, okay, I gotta find this.
can I just add, this is not attached to the rates either.
What is it? It's a supplemental fee.
It is, but this is what the policy that is set aside by the SRF loan requires us to do. It's a restricted fund that we have to have as part of the SRF.
I understand all that. What I'm saying is I ran some numbers. It looks like we can lower that, that supplemental fee by $4 per customer. That's what I was, well, the bottom line I was getting at, based on how much the income in versus how much the payments are every year.
So the calculation that was done by Sanjay and his team was based on the exact SRF loan. So we calculated it completely separate from the old SRF, the old supplemental fee, excuse me. It's not, we didn't look at the old supplemental fee and then, just divide and take it and redo the calculation. We looked at what the requirements of the loan were and reevaluated everything. So yes, it will be $4 less per customer, and we're going to offset some of those charges by billing the larger customers.
So I took into account the debt service. I took into account the number of meters, that's how I calculated it.
But it came out exactly the same as it was.
No, it's different.
It appears that we're taking in more money than what the payments are.
I don't know where you see that.
Okay, well, I don't want to, we'll talk later. So I gotta get all this stuff sorted out as to what's what. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, how about you? Saunders, Director Stovall?
Yeah, no, just gonna reiterate what I said at the last board meeting about having all the things go on the build, so then we could get the pipe sizes, because that'll be important for our customers to know what pipe size they have, that we can kind of go budgeting exactly what's needed.
And those other comments or remarks to clarify on the bill. Units of measure for the commodity and water meter size, and maybe clarifying what the supplemental, put water treatment or something. So people out in the public know, oh, I am CDS, I'm non-CDS, and what does that mean? Thank you. Okay.
We're done.
We're done.
Oh,
Run down.
I would also, Mike remind me, I like to say what I also said yesterday. I think the supplemental rate should stay separate on the bill and not be included in the base rate. It should be a separate thing. It has a expiration date, and we want to be able to see that removed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Want me to do it again?
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
That'd be good. Good. Soon enough.
All right.
I don't see any other questions or comments from the board, from Zoom, from the staff, or then I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Seconded by Director Stovall. All in favor? Aye. None opposed? Meeting adjourned. 7:45.